Yeah, it feels like summer. Rivers? What? Hey John, yeah, that's me. Dare I ask why you're in my house? Well, I heard you were gonna be reviewing our new album, Pacific Daydream, and I just thought I might stop by and see if there was any way that I could possibly sway your opinion. Rivers, I haven't even put out my review of Pacific Daydream yet. How could you know my thoughts? Well, you've just, you've said some things on Twitter, some preemptive feelings, and I really don't know if I can handle another negative review. So, just wanted to stop by, see if there was anything I could do to maybe, sway you. Black Album is coming 2018, 100%, definitely. How would that at all affect my rating of this album? Well, you're putting a little bit too much pressure on us. You're being a little bit unreasonable there. You're expecting a little bit much of us. Obviously, I'm expecting a lot more because you just put out two of the best records of your career this late into your career, rebounding big time from some less than reputable albums. Remember Hurley? Yeah. Remember Ratitude? Yeah, I do too. And so do the fans. And now, after Everything Will Be Alright in the End, and the White Album, you're gonna give us this? Did I mention the Black Album's coming 2018? What's up everyone, John from ARTV. It is time for a review of the new Weezer album, their 11th to be specific. That's crazy that they have that many out in the world at this point. It was originally going to be the Black Album for their 11th album, a follow-up to 2016's The White Album, an excellent record that I might add followed up another excellent record in 2014 that was You Bait, aka Everything Will Be Alright in the End, but this new one is called Pacific Daydream. It's got a very cool album cover. That's the most positive thing that I'm gonna say right off the bat. I like that. I like the idea of this girl on a swing over the entire world. I mean, imagine that feeling. That would be awesome. An album that would give us that feeling, perhaps? Not exactly. That's not what this album is about. This record, Pacific Daydream, is weird for Rivers Cuomo and company because it is much more vibey, and of course, as one of the track's titles tells you, The Beach Boys is a major influence, and obviously Cuomo, Rivers Cuomo that is, has been influenced by this big time. Their music always spoke to him, and now he's kind of dedicating more time to that. And their last record was a smashing success in terms of its commercial performance. Obviously, critics seem to like it a lot as well. But overall, I think that they tried to carry too much of the worst qualities of that over into this new album, and they made something that just feels forgettable. It's spacey, it's hollow in places, and not to say that it's void of anything and that it's not worth listening to, because it definitely is. But you need to go into this expecting something much different, and something not very Weezer-y. Instead, if you're looking for something more like the Beach Boys, except modernized and with Rivers Cuomo styled lyrics, then you're gonna be on board with this 110%. I myself find myself somewhere in the middle of those two things. I find myself wanting more. I would like to hear more dominant guitar leads, and that's something that we really don't get outside of Mexican Fender, and a little bit on tracks like Get Right, but they still don't take a bold lead. In fact, some of these songs just end up sounding like B-sides that washed up from the White Album. I'm looking at you, QB Blitz. That one just feels like something straight out of the playbook there, and yeah, it doesn't really play out to its advantage. The song has an okay chorus, it's catchy and spry enough, but this song and this album in general aren't quite as self-aware as some of the other Weezer material has been in recent times, and for that reason, I feel a bit of a disconnect between Weezer and the listener, and myself being the listener obviously here. I am feeling disappointed as a huge Weezer fan. Now this album definitely has its charms. Right off the bat we got the lead single Feels Like Summer, and unlike many others I actually really still enjoy that song. I think it's catchy as hell, just the absolute life of a party that also has very melancholic lyrics, and I love that. I love the contrasting appeal there. There's a lot of heartache and maybe even allusions to death and the afterlife in that song, and for that reason I love it. It's one of my favorite Weezer songs of the 2010s, not of all time, but still, it definitely ranks up there, and I was more than okay with this more electronic sounding style because I know Weezer, and I know that they have some experimentation and some weird kinks up their sleeve sometimes. They have to get it out somehow. And then we got Mexican Fender. I only allow myself to hear 2 songs normally before an album comes out, so those were my 2, the first 2 obviously. Well, they ended up dropping 5. Half of this damn album came out into the world before it was even released. Thanks for nothing, Crush Management. Seriously, stop this marketing tactic. Mexican Fender was the second song I heard, obviously, and that one has that strong, crunching guitar lead. And it does really just draw you in because it makes you think of summer. And honestly, I think that maybe part of why this album isn't hitting me is because this is more of a vibey summer album, something to drive around to, and it's inspired once again by California, and I don't see that being the perfect fall or winter listening really album at all. So for that reason, I feel like some people might just kind of glance at this, listen to it casually, and then maybe forget about it by the time the next summer hits us. So unless you're in Australia, then you might forget about this one before the next summer rolls around. Now, Mexican Fender, I think, is a strong enough song. It's not exactly contender for Song of the Year, but I really like it, even though the story is pretty simple here. It's Weezer just being nerdy once again, but I love the guitar, and the chorus grew on me big time. My summer love, oh. Those backing vocals are reminiscent of the Beach Boys, and they kind of pull that on us throughout this album, and I'm fine with that inspiration. In fact, in places that does work for them, but unfortunately, the track titled Beach Boys is not one of those songs for me. That song in particular feels a bit insufferable just because it is very just kind of minimal on the bass, the guitar, the lyrics are nothing to write home about. This whole song just feels bland. And then we get Feels Like Summer, which amps things back up, and then we fall back into another pit with Happy Hour. A perfectly okay song, but okay for Weezer, especially coming out of these past 2 great releases. That's not exactly going to cut it unless you're looking for something that's a bit more forgettable, which I don't know why you would be looking for that from really anyone. But if you're okay with something more middle of the road, something a little bit more slowly paced, then I could see you being perfectly okay with this. It's just that this song falls flat in nearly every department. The chorus especially just seems so underwritten. Then right after that, we get pulled back into a totally different world with a surprisingly upbeat song that talks about love, falling in love on a Sunday, and then just not being able to connect with that person, that woman, throughout the week. It's called Weekend Woman, and I really do like this song. It just is kind of chimey. It feels like you're in a totally different world with Weezer, but I'm oddly okay with it because it does settle in and starts to strike you a little bit more, especially with repeated listens. Now, this album goes on a little bit of an odd streak towards the end. Like I already said, QB Blitz feeling like a leftover. Then we have songs like La Mancha Screwjob, which is an odd one that seems like it took some inspiration from the song Lowrider. You know what I'm talking about. Lowrider. And it's got that whole, like, whatever the instrument is, maybe it's like a glockenspiel or something that's just being played and it's giving that very certain wood instrument sound. Yeah, that's the one that I'm talking about. It's okay. I don't know that people will continue to come back to this because I feel like it leaves a bit to be desired. And then you have other songs like Sweet Mary that just feels like it's there and it is sincere. It's one of those that I think took a little bit of time to grow on me, and I'm perfectly okay with this. In fact, I would say it's one of the better ones, but definitely not one of the best of Weezer's career by any means. And unfortunately, that's what Pacific Daydream leaves me feeling like. I mean, some of these tracks are perfectly fine. I like the bass textures. I like that they're laid back in places. There's some guitars that just feel very much of the modern alternative state, like Alt Nation. If you listen to a song like Get Right on this album, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. They sound not like themselves, not unique, but like others, and like others except even more generic. And for somebody as standoutish as Rivers Cuomo and the rest of the guys, they just don't really feel like they're getting their time to shine. This is a very talented band, one of my favorite bands, but ultimately this album was disappointing to me. But that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? I think it's catchy enough. There's some songs that I could definitely see myself vibing to, and overall I feel like this is maybe perhaps a seasonable or else moody album, one that you need to throw on during summer or spring, or maybe if you're just in the right mood. So I don't think it's always going to strike you. In fact, I feel like albums like the Blue Album, Pinkerton, U-Bait, the White Album, even the Grain Album, I feel like those are albums that I can just throw on really at any time. This doesn't feel like one of those. So for me personally, Pacific Daydream, their 11th album, I'm gonna give this a 3 out of 5. Please leave a like on this review to show support for the channel, and if you are able to further help out, you can donate on Patreon. It's the top link in the description down below. Thank you to everybody who is already supporting. You can go directly to it at that annotation in the corner of the screen. Another Weezer review here, another recent rock review here, socials in the description, and I'll see you soon on ARTV.